Daniel noted, my name is Bernard Dobsky. I am a associate professor of political science at Assumption University, and I'm here to offer a mock class in political science. But it should be a mock class and not a mockery of a class. And so when I sit down with my students in uh, hybrid sessions, I require them to live stream their video. If they cannot live stream a video, then I ask that they put up a photograph of themselves, so I'm not lecturing into the void at a bunch of black screens. So for those of you who are able to, please pop on up. I'd like to see you. Education should be done face to face, even if we can't be in person. We should nevertheless do it face to face. I'll say one other thing. Mr. McElveen offered you the use of the live chat. You should certainly feel free to use that. If you have a question that you want to pose directly to me in the middle of my comments, you just feel free to interrupt me. I probably won't see the hand raise function or even notice the chat down there at the bottom of the screen. So if you have a question, you can just say, Mr. Dobsky, Professor Dobsky, I've got a question right now. I'd be happy to stop my comments and address your question or concern. As I said, I'm a associate professor of political science here at Assumption. I've been here for almost 20 years. I have had the good fortune of being the chair of the political science department for several years. I was the director of the pre-law program for a number of years. I also taught at the Rome campus, Assumption. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of Assumption's Rome campus, but I've taught there twice now. Both were fantastic experiences. I mention all of this just to let you know that if you have questions about these things, whether it's the pre-law program, about the political science department, our study abroad program in Rome, you should feel free to talk to me about it, and I would be happy to address those questions. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you now just because I find it might be helpful for you to see some of this stuff. Let's see, I just have a couple of points here that I want to raise. Don't worry, this isn't going to be on the test. You don't have to take notes, so just to open up your eyes and your ears. First thing I've got there is a statement by Theodore Roosevelt. To educate a man in mind, but not in morals, is to educate a menace to society. That's exactly right. In fact, it's so obvious a point about education that it shouldn't need stating. And yet it seems to need stating. And it seems to need stating because we've forgotten what a liberal education ought to be. So let's do this. What is a liberal education? I have there a liberal education is about more than just a job. What am I talking about? Well, at Assumption University, the courses in political science constitute an integral part of your liberal education here. What is a liberal education, right? If the university aims to provide you with a liberal education, then it should provide you with an education that liberates you, right? Liberal, the word liberal comes from the word libertas, freedom, liberty, right? It's not about turning you into a Democrat or a conservative for that matter. It's not a liberal in that sense, but an education that in and towards freedom. All right, so if we're going to provide you a liberal education and that's going to liberate you, the next question is, liberates you from what? Well, the university has to provide you or try to provide you with an education that liberates you from ignorance. And not just any kind of ignorance, but the most important kind, ignorance about yourselves, right? I mean, there's an infinite number of things about which we as human beings are ignorant. Right? How many golf balls fill up the Grand Canyon? I'm ignorant of that. But you know what? It doesn't matter if I don't know the answer to that question. The answer to that question is not nearly as important to me as the answer to the question of how should I live my life? Now, there are certainly other technical questions out there that are perhaps more important than the number of golf balls that fill up the Grand Canyon. Like, I don't know, I need to get my transmission fixed. That's also an important ignorance. I don't know how to do that. Nevertheless, the question about the best way of life for me as a human being is still more important than that practical ignorance. So a university that aspires to offer you a kind of wisdom, some kind of human wisdom, wisdom about what it means to be a human being, that's what's at the heart of a liberal education, right? Implied in the very existence of a college or a university is the notion that some things, some kinds of knowledge, some kinds of wisdom are simply more important than others. This, again, knowledge is good, but not all knowledge is equal, ladies and gentlemen. So a school, for instance, that strives to provide you with only a technical education, or only a vocational education, or only an education in the STEM fields, that would be a very fine education, right? We've got lots of those here in Worcester. At WPI, for instance, excellent school. That's a great school. But that is a vocational school. It is not providing you a liberal education. So a school that gives you that kind of background in the sciences, but otherwise neglects a treatment of Shakespeare, of Picasso, of Russian history, of politics, of the Bible, that wouldn't be a liberal education. That's not what we do here, right? That wouldn't be what we do here. Now, don't get me wrong, STEM's important, engineering's important. We cover those things at Assumption, but that's not the core of what we do. Now, someone might be sitting there listening at home. Maybe you're thinking this yourself. Maybe your mom and dad are sitting off screen and listening, going, well, hey, wait a second, paying top dollar here. A college education should provide you with a means to a job, right? So maybe, Professor Dobsky, a liberal education is an education that frees you or liberates you, but liberates you from economic hardship. Aha! Maybe that's what they're saying. And that's something you hear a lot about, right? You guys get a lot of this. You might hear it from your friends. You might hear it from your parents. You might hear it from your teachers. You might even think this yourselves, but that kind of view of education, a view of the university as simply a means to getting a job, is a shallow view of education. I say that unapologetically. Don't get me wrong. If we do our job here at Assumption University, you will get the skills you need, the training you need to go out and find the job of your calling, your vocation. That is not the raison d'etre. That is not our telos. That is not our end, our purpose. Why is this view of education as a means to a job, merely a shallow view of education? Because there's a deeper ignorance than how to make money. What's that deeper ignorance? Well, once you make the money, if you're lucky enough to do so, right, you make a boatload of money, and now you say, well, now what? What do I do with my money? Right? What's the best way to make use of it? What role does wealth play in a healthy and happy human life? What am I to do now with my free time and my leisure and my freedom from the press of necessity? We all have the fantasy, right, of winning the lottery and suddenly being on Easy Street. But have you guys ever heard of the thing called the curse of the lottery winner? Anyone ever hear that? I'm seeing Jacob nod his head, yes. The curse of the lottery winner is something like this. Amazingly, shockingly, surprisingly, about half of the people who win the lottery within about 5 or 6 years of their having won the lottery end up broke, or divorced, or hooked on drugs, or homeless. Why is that, do you think? Why do you think that happens, that we finally get, you get that big jackpot, you win the big lottery, but within 5 to 10 years, half the people who do so are out on the street? Well, I'll tell you why. If you're not going to hazard a guess, that's fine. I'll tell you why. It's because money doesn't tell you how to use it. Money doesn't provide you with the prudence, with the habits, with the character of putting it to proper use, because money, my friends, is only a means. It is not an end. It's an instrument. It is a tool. But like all tools, it doesn't tell you how to use it. Same thing with medical science, right? It's a tool. You can use it to heal people. You can use it to kill people. Science by itself doesn't teach you how to do these things. Money by itself doesn't tell you how to use it. And so we're still left with these bigger questions. What is the proper end of a human life? Is there a natural purpose for human beings? And if there is such a thing as happiness, then how does that goal, for which we all strive and yearn for as individuals, how does that affect our living together within political communities, right? Now, again, you might be sitting there kind of cynically, cautiously, Dobsky, you're full of beans. Wealthy people are happy. Well, let's start with this, right? Let's just take a look at a couple of examples to show you what I mean. Consider most celebrities. Look at how miserable the rich and famous tend to be. You think Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Tom Cruise, Armie Hammer, there's one. You think they're happy? Do you want their lives? I have serious doubts. And if you do, I have serious doubts for you. Most celebrities sooner or later end up as tabloid fodder. They end up on page 6. They end up on TMZ or they get put on blast on whatever various platforms are on social media today. I can't keep up anymore. I used to be young and hip, and now I'm old and clueless. But that's not where we want to go with our lives, is it? If we're being honest with ourselves. So the point of my comments here is that all of the wealth and power and fame in the world can't buy you what you want. It can't give you, for instance, sensibility in the affairs of human beings. And sensibility, ladies and gentlemen, is important to us. Right? If you don't think sensibility in the affairs of men and women in political affairs matters to us, then why not sign up for a lobotomy tomorrow? And we don't voluntarily sign up for lobotomies, ladies and gentlemen, because we don't want to live that life. We want to retain our sensibility as much as possible. Look, so that's one example, right? Let's consider another one over here. Maybe you're thinking, well, Professor Dobsky's slanting the playing field too far in his direction with these use of the celebrities and the famous, the rare and exceptional human beings, right? Who among us here really knows a celebrity, right? Okay, fine. So let's take your everyday, run-of-the-mill, average wealthy human being. Consider among the wealthy classes in America the predominance of drug use or of adultery or of white-collar crime, of high divorce rates, or all of the reliance on psychiatry or therapy or pills and drugs to anesthetize them from the fact that all the wealth and power that they've spent their lives pursuing can't provide that happiness they've been seeking. I have a friend, right, very successful businessman, spends every waking hour of his life working in a very lucrative job, working hard now so that when he's much older, he won't have to worry about the financial resources he will need for his family, right? He wants to retire. He's my age and he wants to retire within about 5 years with all the money that he thinks he and his family will ever need. Now let us set aside about how crazy that sounds. All of the money you'll ever need. It's possible. And I wouldn't put it past this individual to get it. In fact, why not aspire to something like this? But the problem is that it also demands a complete and total dedication to his profession in the immediate future, right? In the immediate present, rather, in the hope that it will pay off to provide a happiness sometime in the future. But what is this, ladies and gentlemen? What am I saying here? What is my friend really doing? He is engaged in the constant deferral of human happiness. Pushing it off just around the corner, just around the corner, just around the corner. Pursuing a happiness that will always be just out of reach. That strikes me as tragic. That strikes me as tragic. Now, I understand that this may sound depressing to you as an opening. You're like, hey, I'm coming to this class, my political science class with Professor Dobsky at Assumption University. I want to be uplifted, and he's giving me all of this depressing stuff. I apologize for going on about this, but I have to do so because everywhere, at least I turn today, and I suspect you're hearing the same thing, whether you look at the news or you read the pundits, the politicians, your parents, students. I even hear this from colleagues at other institutions. Liberal education, they say, is a waste of time and money because it doesn't prepare you for professional life, as if college or university education was merely pre-job training. That understanding, ladies and gentlemen, is a corruption of the original conception of education as a means to freeing you from ignorance about yourselves. If you want to pursue the task of the university, if you want to secure the wisdom you need for a healthy and happy human life, then you have to get an education towards self-knowledge. All right. So maybe you're on board with this point. Maybe you're with me so far. But you might also be sitting there going, well, okay, fine. Right? If the true object of education, Professor Dobsky, is not to make men carpenters, but carpenters men, right? As I got there from that quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, that's the true object of education. Then what does this have to do with politics, right? What does this have to do with political life and our views on the human good? Okay. Am I going too fast for you, by the way? No? All right. Beautiful. In the first place, I would say this. No matter where you go, no matter what you choose to do with your lives, no matter what you major in while you're at Assumption University, or if you go somewhere else and major in something very cool there, no matter what you do, ladies and gentlemen, you will always, each and every one of us, be a citizen. You will be a citizen. And that means you have a responsibility to be informed about your political history and the political documents that give shape and life to that history. And I'm going to say something else here, precisely because there is a guarantee, right? And look, I mean, this is one thing. This, by the way, I can't stress this enough. This is amazing because I can almost never give guarantees about anything as a political scientist. I can almost never guarantee anything, right? You might major in, you might major in art history today and end up being a doctor. You might major in pre-med and end up being a poet. You just don't know where life is going to take you, right? But this is the one thing I can guarantee you, is that no matter where you go, you're going to be a citizen. You will be a member of a political community. Now, again, you might be going, all right, so what does this have to do with everything we've been talking about? Because, ladies and gentlemen, political communities, wherever they may be found, all of them, claim to have answered the fundamental questions about the proper form of human life, and to have answered them in advance for their citizens or their subjects or their various members, to have answered them for you. It's the claim to have answered these questions that constitutes the roots or grounds of the authority of a political community. Right? Think about this. Let me like put on the brakes for a second, right? Even though I've been teaching all day, I'm super amped up to talk to you guys about politics. So I'm kind of moving at a million miles an hour here. If a political community of which you are a member does not have the right answer about how you should live, about what makes you happiest, about what constitutes freedom or equality or justice or virtue or human excellence, if it doesn't have those answers, then tell me, what business does it have making laws that shape how you live your life? Right? Think about it. Think about it about the law as a human person, right? And that law tells you, you can do this, you can't do that. You must do this. You're free to avoid doing that. And let's say some of those commands involve giving up your property, restricting your freedom, going off to a foreign land to fight and kill and maybe risk death on behalf. If that law was a person and made those demands and told you what you could do with your property and limited your freedom in the name of some goal, you might ask that person, I'm sorry, how do you know what's best for me? Do you know what's best for me? And if they can't prove that they do, well, then why listen to them? Why would you ever give up your property, your freedom, risking life and limb in a foreign land on their behalf if they don't know what's best for you? See, all laws thereby implicitly claim to have this answer about what is best for you. Because absent that answer, they cannot convincingly make the case that you should live your life by them. Now, You follow me so far? You know, if we were in a classroom, they say, you know, this mock class should be like, how you would, what kind of class you'd have with Professor Dobzky. I am seated right now at my desk in my office. In a real classroom with me, I would be walking around and gesticulating wildly and prowling and so on. I would be perambulating, and, you know, you name it. But the camera requires that I be rooted here. All right, so let's take a step back here. You following me so far, right? Does it make some sense? I mean, I'm making a claim for really awesome power of the laws of a political community. And this may sound strange to our American ears, because our American ears, we might think, well, I mean, Professor Dobzky, that might be true of other political communities. But that's not true of America. America doesn't make these claims to have, figured everything out for us. I mean, this is the land of the free, baby, right? We are free to live as we please, to worship as we please, to speak and assemble freely as we please, to pursue what vocations we want, and within a fair amount of reason, to do what we want with our property and raise our kids how we want. And if we don't want to go to war, we don't send our children to the military. Professor Dobzky, you might have it right about these other countries, these other laws. You've got it wrong about America. Well, I don't know about that. The American regime would seem to rest on some pretty large foundational premises about what constitutes the human good. Don't believe me? Let's consider some of the following here. I want to run through some opinions that we magically, amazingly, almost all universally share in the land of the free. This is going to be really interesting. When we get done with this, we're going to be wondering, how does this happen in the land of the free, in a country where people are free to say and do whatever they want? They end up saying and doing pretty darn near the same thing. That's bizarre. Well, like what, Professor Dobson? Well, let's start with this. Let's start with our views about progress in science and industry. I think it's safe to say that Americans view progress in science and industry as an almost unproblematic good. Right? If we conducted a survey or just merely did a kind of non-scientific observation of our fellow citizens, I think we'd see pretty readily that most Americans, if not all of them, view progress in science and industry as a good to be pursued at virtually any cost. This is especially true now, ladies and gentlemen, in the time of COVID. We want that vaccine. Let's get it out. Science needs to be telling us what we can and can't do. Can we open up schools? Do we need to lock down the economy? How many masks do I need to wear? Do I need them to wear them at home? Are the young likely to transmit this, even if they're vaccinated? We want answers to these questions, and that requires progress in science and industry. But it's not just COVID. It's not just healthcare. We want our goods, the goods we buy, whether it's video games or cars or clothing. We want them to be built better, cheaper, faster, and that requires that science and industry and technology make constant advances. And that means that we be devoted to progress in science and industry. And this brings us to point 2. This desire for better products, for better, more reliable, pandemic vaccines, right? Or improved comfort. All of these desires about science and progress in industry are related to our notions about economic prosperity, notions that are themselves closely linked to our conceptions about human happiness, right? So we think, well, the more money we make, right, the more money I have, the more money are secure, the more we can engage in those technologically improved products, whether it's healthcare or clothes or cars or laptops or phones or whatever. We want more money so we can have goods that allow us not just to live, but live comfortably. And so we tend to see, as Americans, almost uniformly, the chief object of government is what? To regulate the economy, to make sure prosperity keeps flowing. I'll give you an example, right? Just to show you the extent to which people seemingly on opposite sides of the fence really do agree about fundamental issues. Take Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. You might think, well, these two people couldn't be any more polarized on the issues of the economy, right? They seem totally apart, right? They're mirror opposites of each other. And yet both agree that government's chief job is the preservation of economic prosperity. They just disagree about how to produce it or what to do with that wealth once it's produced. Do we distribute it, right, to everyone equally, or do we let those, in the higher tax brackets take more of it? Should we cut taxes to produce this? Should we raise taxes to even the playing field? What do we do? They disagree over means. They don't disagree about the end. Economic prosperity is a good. It's almost uniformly held in America. Or think about how most Americans view the role any specific religion should play in government, right? Most of us cringe at the thought of any one religious denomination running our government or legislating personal morality. I mean, we've certainly seen our fair share of foreign governments who have been dominated by a particular religion and the terrible things that have been done in the name of that religion by those governments. We think, not for us, not here, not ever, no thank you. Even when we turn it around and think about domestic politics, I'm not sure how many of you recall with any kind of, power or memory, Mitt Romney's run for president against President Obama. And what was one of the criticisms or questions raised about his candidacy? Would his Mormonism impact his being president of the United States? Why do we care about his Mormonism? Because we think that personal religious belief, personal morality should stay out of the public sphere. This is why we can elect men like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, a Democrat and a Republican, respectively, right? Two men from different sides of the aisle who have very serious character flaws. Why can we vote for these men? Because we think we need to keep personal morality separate from the public sphere. Where do we get these ideas? Finally, let's consider this last opinion. What about the belief in the fundamental equality of all people? Consider for this, just bear with me for a second. Consider the reaction to the claims that have been made in the past year or two about systemic or structural inequality in America. And consider the way that our citizens, our corporations, our communities, and our schools have reacted to those claims. Consider just how uniformly so many of them fall in line and endorse them without much moment's reflection. Now, I need to be absolutely clear here. In making these comments, I am not taking a side on the issue of structural inequality or systemic inequality. I'm not picking sides, and I don't want to enter into this particular debate. All I'm trying to point out is that it's worth noting that when it comes to the arguments over equality, one side has won decidedly and rapidly. The overwhelming consent of the academy, of our public and private educational institutions, the media, the entertainment industry, corporations, politicians, citizens. Well, it's worth wondering why. Why is there such universal assent around this issue? I'm almost done. I've got about a few more minutes left before I want to open this up to questions and discussions. But perhaps you think, again, I'm making extreme comments here, and that they really don't show anything. But imagine if yours truly, Professor Dobbs, published an op-ed in the Boston Globe, or the New York Times, or the Worcester T&G, or the Assumption University newspaper, Le Provocateur. And in that, I claimed that the majority of Americans were uneducated and therefore should not be allowed to vote. In fact, only that the smartest, most educated, most morally upright people should run the government. That everyone else should sit down and shut up and listen to their intellectual superiors. What do you think would happen to Professor Dobzky? Do you think people would sit down and now, by the way, let's be very clear. That's not an argument I would make. Okay, this is a straw man here. This is a hypothetical. What I want to get at is, what do you think people would say to that argument? Would they sit down and reflect calmly over the points I made, think about the evidence I produced, respond reasonably and calmly with counter arguments? Alex shook his head no. Right, Alex, I don't think that would happen. What would happen to me? The word that's used today, I think, is one. I don't like the phenomenon, but I think the word is, it really captures what's done. I would be canceled. I would be canceled. I would imagine that I would be asked to write an apology. If not, I may be run out of town on a rail. I might lose my job. Who knows? Why? Because I question the fundamental premise of possibility of equality. I'm not questioning that. I think it's fascinating, though, however, that we all share these views almost uniformly. We agree about the fundamental goodness of progress in science and industry, that wealth and the pursuit of wealth should be the chief object of the citizen, and the preservation of wealth and the possibility of getting wealthy should be the chief object of government. That we all almost uniformly think we should separate church and state and divorce private morality from public legislation. And that we not question the goodness of freedom and equality. How does this happen in a society that prides itself on freedom of thought, on freedom of speech, on freedom of assembly? Because, ladies and gentlemen, and this goes back to the point I was making earlier, our views have been decisively shaped by our political community. More specifically, by our founding political documents and by the shared history that they make possible. That shared history has got its share of glory and its share of failures. But these questions is what I'm getting at, or these questions have been answered in an important way in advance for us by these foundational documents, have been answered for us in an important way by this shared history. Documents and a history, by the way, I would venture to say, most of us have never read, and most of us have never studied, and most of us have not adequately understood. And that's a problem. Because if we truly seek to become autonomous, does anyone know what the word autonomous means? Self-governing, self-ruling. If we truly want to become self-governing human beings, which is to say, if we truly want to become liberated human beings, free human beings, then we must understand those forces that shape and inform our view of the human good. Those forces that shape and inform and give direction to our lives. And ladies and gentlemen, what does that mean? It means if we really want to become self-governing individuals, liberated individuals, we have to study political science. And this is where, if I were to have one, I would take the mic and I would drop it. Now, I am happy to talk about any one of the things I've said that you might want to argue with me about, or that you find disagreeable, or that you have questions about. I think we've got about 20 minutes or so available to us. So I would be delighted to open this up to questions you might have. We can also, by the way, go ahead, Jacob, is that, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I had a quick question. It's not really directly related to your monologue, I guess. More.
I like to call it a rant.
Soliloquy. You had said that you had taught at the Rome campus, and I was wondering What does the, I guess, instruction in theology or religious studies look like on the Rome campus versus Assumption and Worcester? And I guess just a little bit, I know that's not directly related to
No,
political
that's
science.
fine. I'm happy to address that.
Thank you.
All right. So what happens is there are two Assumption faculty who are kind of responsible for running the campus in Rome. So one of them is there for a multi-year contract, and that person serves as the director of the Rome campus and is responsible for maintaining the physical property, organizing a lot of the excursions that students go on, and making sure that all of the 10 million little unseen things that happen behind the scenes that make it possible for American students to live and study in Rome happen. Now that, as I said, is an Assumption faculty member. They will also likely teach courses on campus, on the Rome campus. Now, every semester, a new faculty member will fly out, and their job will be to teach two courses, and it'll be something that is in their discipline. One of them will be in their discipline. So when I went, I taught a course on political philosophy called "Making Rome Great Again and Again and Again and Again." I also taught another course, and this whoever comes out, I went out in the spring. The faculty member who was there before me in the fall also had to teach this course. It's called Encounters with Rome. And that becomes a course that kind of got a very loose skeletal form that whoever's teaching it, they can pretty much do whatever they want with it. All right. So there are 3 classes right there. And then there are 3 other classes that are open to you to take. One in philosophy, one in theology, one in art history. Oh, sorry. Oh, let me take that back. One in theology, one in art history, and then Italian. So I've got 6 courses there. You only take 5. You have to take the art history, and I believe you have to take the Italian. Those you have to take. And so then you can choose among those that are left, right? The class that was taught in theology when I was there was taught by we call it an adjunct teacher with whom the institution has a working relationship. I can't remember his name now for the life of me. It was 2 years ago. But
Professor Boyd is his name.
I'm sorry?
Professor Boyd is his name.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you've got Boyd and then Daria Borghese, who's the art history teacher. And the Italian courses are taken in at a little institute called Italia Dea, which is right downtown in the historic district. Really beautiful spot. But anyway, Professor Boyd would meet with you twice a week. There would be I think like the Tuesday meeting would be, you'd meet in our classroom in the dorm. And then on Thursday, there would be a meeting out at a site, right? A theologically relevant site. And there's no shortage of those in Rome. So that's how theology was offered when I was there, right? And generally, if they're not, for instance, if a professor from the theology department was to go to Rome, they would teach theology. Right? They would teach theology. And then one would have to work out what happens with philosophy or something like that. But when I was there, Professor Corrigan was the director, and he was also from the philosophy department. So he would offer a class in philosophy. Boyd offered a class in theology. Borghese was art history. Then there were the Italian classes, and then I offered the 2 classes, one in politics and one with encounters in Rome. So the key for something like the Rome program, though, to be clear, is you generally want to try and go there as a sophomore, because you need to go while you're taking your either introductory or intermediate theology courses and philosophy courses. So you come to Assumption and you say, oh, I'm really interested in going to the Rome campus. At least I'm thinking about it. You let your advisor know from the very beginning, because they will plan these courses or schedule these courses out 2 to 3 years in advance. So they'll be able to know, look, if you want to go in your sophomore year, these are the courses that are going to be offered your sophomore year. So don't take those courses now. Because if you take those courses now, well, you can't take them in Rome, right? So I think I've given a very long-winded answer, Jacob, to your question, but I hope that does answer your question. I mean, clearly the way theology is taught here on campus in Worcester, it's purely academic, right? The classes in Rome, all of them really do try and take advantage of the unique setting that you're in. I can't recommend the experience highly enough. I had a tremendous experience. Students were great. I wish I could go back right now, to be honest. I suppose I should have begun my comments, by the way. I'm congratulating everyone, right, with having been admitted to Assumption University. Congratulations on that. That's fantastic. You wouldn't be here if you had not been admitted. Would Assumption be the kind of school you're seriously thinking about? Is this, I would imagine that's probably true too if you're on this video, on this Zoom meeting. I see there's a chat. Jacob has asked, what does the international relations major look like? Well, that would be a interdisciplinary major. So look, within political science department, we have we offer a number of, I mean, one of the cores of our pillars of our upper division offerings is international relations, and that's actually an area that I teach quite extensively. The international relations major tends to be spread across, you have like a global studies major, you would have classes in history, you might even have classes in philosophy that would, or economics that would apply to that, would help satisfy that. You know, I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for, but it's not simply a political science major. If someone were to major in political science, they can have there's enough freedom within the major just to really emphasize courses in international relations, but the major would still be in political science. All right. So first year classes of political science major would take, I would generally recommend that they take something like we have 11 courses you have to take in the major. 5 are required. There are 5 specific ones that are required. Introduction to American Government, Modern States, that's our comparative politics basic. Peace and War, that's our international relations intro, and political philosophy. Now those are 200 level courses. Those are all required. You have to take those. The 5th required course is the senior seminar. Now, after those 4 courses, there are still some criteria that have to be met, but you have a great deal of freedom. Now, Alex has asked a specific question I haven't answered yet, and there's a reason for that. That's because we do offer a course called Quest for Justice, and that's our intro to political science. That is actually not a requirement for the major. It is possible to take 11 classes that satisfy the requirements for the major and not take Quest for Justice. Nevertheless, I think Quest for Justice offers a wonderful introduction to the way we approach the study of politics at Assumption University. So if you were an advisee of mine and you were saying, well, look, I'm kind of interested in taking some political science courses in my first year, first thing I'd say is great, best decision you've ever made. And then I would say what you want to do is take, let's look for a section of Quest for Justice. And then let's consider 1 or maybe 2 more options for the entire year. And that would be, I would say, let's look closely at American Government or Modern States or one of the 200 level courses. We do not want you thrown in a 300 level course as a freshman. You won't be ready for it, okay? At the same time, I also encourage students, the students will come in and say, I think I want to major in X. And I say, brilliant, that's wonderful, I love it. I'm glad you have a real interest, but be careful. don't overdo the courses you think you might major in early, because you end up going, oh boy, I really thought I wanted to be a Spanish major or business major. Boy, I'm finding out that this is just not what I want to do. And then you realize, well, I've kind of blown all those credits. And now I'm behind in terms of the pursuit of my core courses. So I really strongly encourage students to look, you've got a bunch of core requirements you have to address when you come in. We can assign you courses in your field of interest, like a political science course, Alex, that will both address a political science major and a core requirement at the same time. But I only want you taking 1 or 2 courses a semester max, 3, no more than 3 all year, because you have so many other core courses I want you to address early. And there's a reason I want you to address those early. Not simply so you can, quote, get them out of the way. I hate that excuse. That's terrible. You don't want to get these out of the way. You want to experience the full panoply of human learning, right? I mean, you never know. You come in and think, oh, Professor Dobsky, he blew my mind when I saw him. I want to study politics. But then maybe you take a class in philosophy or theology, right, or economics. You go, no, that's it. This is what I want to do. You should have that experience. You should have that early, so you know what to do. So that by the time you're ending your sophomore year, you can go, I can confidently say, I know that the study of politics is for me because I've had all of these other experiences. So that is a very, very long-winded answer to your question, Alex, but that's what I would say. Intro to politics, the quest for justice, and then one or two of the 200 level courses. Let's see if there are other questions. Molly, go ahead, Jacob.
How do the philosophy and theology majors like interact? What are the? Is there any? Are there any similarities?
Oh, sure. Well, okay. So the philosophy, theology, and political science departments are actually all on the same floor and Founders, the 3rd floor of Founders, and so there's no surprise that a lot of the people who will major in theology or in philosophy or in political science end up actually double majoring in one of the others, or in history or economics or something like that. But yeah, there is a great deal of interaction between them. We have a kind of small, it's really a double suite office that becomes I shouldn't say double suite, just a larger office space that we've turned into a kind of student library or student lounge, student library, where the poli-sci and philosophy and theology majors can study together, can read together, can have some of their club meetings, their departmental meetings and things like that. But yeah, no, there is a great deal of I don't want to say overlap, but really of integration between political science, philosophy, and theology. So a lot of the students you see in one class, you'll see them in another class. And so I think there really is a good deal of engagement between those students. Yeah. I mean, look, the questions, there's a good reason for it. The questions they are asking are very closely related to each other, right? And the texts they use to address those questions are similar in the sense that they demand a lot out of you, right? They demand a lot out of you. You're not just going to be reading textbook stuff. You're going to be dealing with, primary documents in philosophy and theology. That's true of political science as well. I mean, I think that there's a reason why we work so well together, and that's because our approach to the human questions, the fundamental human questions, really is they're consistent and sympathetic to one another. We speak to one another. At least they endeavor to. All right. So far I've heard from Alex and Jacob. Anyone else? We've got a few minutes left. Can broad questions about the Assumption experience or life in Worcester? Is everyone here from Massachusetts? Molly, where are you from, if you don't mind sharing?
I'm from Maine.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, I was wondering if anyone was maybe outside of New England or something. I was going to say, well, look, I could show outside my window and all of the wonderful snow I'm getting right now. But you know that perhaps better than I do, right? So, yeah, you're pretty familiar. Yeah, good. What attracted you to Assumption University?
I'm committed to play softball here.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. Great. So we'll be seeing you in the fall then.
Yep.
Oh, very good. Very good. Alex, what about you? What drew you to Assumption University?
I had friends who applied a couple years ago and they told me about it, and it was always kind of stuck with me. So I toured last summer, and based off the tour, I decided to apply.
Nice. Now, do you live in Massachusetts?
Connecticut.
Okay, all right. Nice. So it was word of mouth from friends.
Yep.
Yeah, good, good. Jack, what about you, if you don't mind me asking? Well, what drew you to Assumption?
My mom actually went there.
Aha. All right, so it's in the family. Nice.
Yes.
I can imagine you've been to the campus a couple
Yep.
of yeah, so
Yep.
you're- Yeah. Have you been recently?
Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of the new building we've got here, a lot of the new construction?
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive how much they've put up in the last few years. Between the Hagen Campus Center and the new nursing building, it's not Hagen Campus Center, I'm sorry, the SOTSIS building, that's it, used to, yeah, right next to the Hagen, the SOTSIS building, yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of new stuff that's being put up here, yeah, so and then the new plaza that was there with the fountain and everything. Yeah, I've been here almost 20 years, so when that happened, I'm like, whoa, what a major facelift to the school. Good. Jacob, what about yourself? What drew you to Assumption?
Well, definitely just size and I guess the academic or like Catholic nature, but also came highly recommended from my guidance counselor. We just kind of talked about what would fit, and then yeah.
All right.
Actually, my girlfriend's mom actually coached one of the admissions counselors in soccer, like when she was a kid. So that was like another funny connection.
Yeah, I'm now realizing that I've been here a long time when the young people who my daughters went to school with are now showing up in my classes. And I'm like, oh boy, I did not, that can't be right. That can't quite possibly be right. But yeah, now the next, I guess, milestone that will really terrify me is when one of the students shows up and they're the children of one of my students. That will really blow my mind, I suppose. I guess that day is not too far off. But, all right, great. Well, any other questions about Rome or pre-law or just the general Assumption experience? Let me ask you something, by the way. I was about to let you go, but how are you finding? I mean, you guys are high school seniors. How are you finding this remote hybrid in-person thing? Are any of you in person? Are you all remote?
I'm personally in person, but we had some time where we were remote, and I did not enjoy that. So
Yeah.
For me, we do like a hybrid system, but I think after first semester, so many kids just started leaving and going fully remote that there was like 1 or 2 kids in my class. So I just decided to do remote too.
That, you know what, that was exactly what happened to my daughters. Is they're dying to be in person, but so many people just said, we've got the option to be remote. After a while, the class just dwindled down. So it's basically my 2 daughters, they're twins. They're like, oh God, we see each other at home all the time. Now we see each other in class all the time. But yeah, that's kind of that's a major bummer. Well, listen, I'm hoping for the best. I know that there was a recent article published in the Wall Street Journal predicting herd immunity by April. We'll see. And I've heard a lot of predictions before. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that one. But the hope is in the fall we'll be in person. Everyone can be in person in class, and that would be really great. So let's keep our fingers crossed for all that. In the meantime, everyone, be safe, be good, think hard about it.